For decades, Tony Curtis stood as one of classic Hollywood's most recognizable faces, charismatic, ambitious, and endlessly watchable. To audiences, he represented a certain golden age promise, that talent and determination could carry someone from hardship to global fame. His smile felt effortless, his performances confident, and his presence larger than life. Yet, as with many public figures shaped by the studio era, the man behind the image was more complicated than the mythology allowed. Over time, stories emerged that encouraged a more layered understanding of who he was, not just as a star, but as a person shaped by instability, fear, ambition, and regret. Revisiting Curtis today requires care. It means honoring the artistry that defined an era while also acknowledging the human flaws that accompanied it. Rather than reducing him to either icon or villain, a thoughtful re-examination invites us to look at the full arc of his life. The childhood that molded him, the fame that elevated him, the addictions that nearly destroyed him, and the lingering questions that continue to shape conversations about his legacy. Tony Curtis was born Bernard Schwartz in New York City, the son of Hungarian Jewish immigrants struggling to survive in a harsh economic climate. His early life was defined not by glamour, but by scarcity. Financial hardship pushed his parents into difficult decisions, including temporarily placing him and his siblings in an orphanage. For a child, such displacement can leave lasting impressions, feelings of insecurity, abandonment, and emotional vigilance. Adding to this instability was tragedy within the family. Curtis's younger brother died in a traffic accident, a loss that reportedly shattered the household. His mother struggled with severe mental illness, and another sibling later faced similar challenges. Home was not a sanctuary, it was unpredictable. These experiences formed the emotional foundation of a boy who would later become known for charm and reinvention. Long before Hollywood reshaped his name and image, Curtis had already learned a powerful survival skill: adaptation. He understood how quickly circumstances could change, and how necessary it was to perform strength even when feeling vulnerable. Adolescence offered little immediate relief. Curtis drifted toward street life, drawn into minor delinquency not out of malice, but perhaps as a response to instability. Structure eventually came through outside intervention, programs that introduced discipline and routine. Those formative experiences planted the seeds of ambition. During periods of illness, including bouts of rheumatic fever, he discovered art and drawing, finding in creativity a private outlet for emotions he could not easily express. This balance between turbulence and aspiration would define much of his adulthood. Curtis did not enter acting from a place of entitlement. He approached it as a path away from chaos. By the time he made his way to Hollywood, he carried with him not only dreams but also deep-rooted fears: fear of insignificance, fear of returning to poverty, fear of disappearing. In many ways, the drive that later fueled his stardom was born in those early years of uncertainty. The hunger to be seen, admired, and secure was not vanity alone. It was survival transformed into ambition. When Curtis arrived in Hollywood in the late 1940s, the studio system still controlled careers with precision. Universal Pictures signed him and gave him a new name, Tony Curtis. The change was not merely cosmetic, it symbolized reinvention. Bernard Schwartz, the son of immigrants, was reshaped into a leading man designed for mass appeal. Curtis embraced the transformation. He trained extensively in voice, movement, fencing, and screen presence. Early roles were modest, sometimes barely noticeable, but he persisted. The studio carefully built his image, positioning him as handsome and versatile. Behind the scenes, however, Curtis reportedly battled self-doubt. He worried about being exposed as inexperienced, about not belonging among more seasoned actors. That insecurity drove relentless work ethic. Slowly, audiences responded. Fan mail increased. Casting opportunities improved. Hollywood had discovered a new star, and Curtis had found validation on a scale he had never imagined. Yet even at this early stage, success carried a quiet undercurrent of anxiety, the constant pressure to remain desirable, relevant, and indispensable. Breakthrough performances soon elevated Curtis beyond matinee idol status. Films like Sweet Smell of Success demonstrated dramatic range that surprised critics who had initially underestimated him. Working alongside established actors, he proved capable of intensity and nuance. This evolution from heartthrob to serious performer reflected ambition beyond image. Curtis wanted respect, not just popularity. That desire drove him to pursue varied genres: historical epics, comedies, thrillers, and romantic dramas. His pairing with Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon in Some Like It Hot cemented his place in cinematic history. The film's comedic brilliance remains celebrated today. Yet even during these triumphs, Curtis reportedly felt pressure to outperform expectations. Hollywood's golden era often masked personal struggle beneath studio polish. For Curtis, the applause may have quieted childhood insecurities temporarily, but it did not erase them. Stardom magnified both strengths and vulnerabilities. The higher he rose, the more he feared the fall. In that tension between achievement and anxiety, the foundations of later turmoil were quietly forming. Curtis's personal life frequently mirrored the intensity of his career. His marriage to actress Janet Leigh was widely publicized and marketed as a glamorous union of rising stars. Together, they appeared to embody Hollywood perfection. However, public image rarely tells the whole story. The demands of fame, long filming schedules, public scrutiny, and professional competition created strain. Curtis later spoke candidly about insecurity within relationships, suggesting that success did not automatically bring emotional stability. After his divorce from Leigh, he entered additional marriages, ultimately marrying 6 times. Observers have interpreted this pattern in various ways: restlessness, romantic optimism, fear of loneliness. Whatever the explanation, his relationships reflected complexity rather than simplicity. Fame amplifies personal tendencies; it rarely resolves them. Curtis seemed to crave connection while simultaneously struggling to sustain it. As the 1960s progressed and Hollywood began to change, so too did his place within it. The industry that once celebrated him was evolving, and adapting again became necessary. The late 1960s and 1970s marked a turning point. New filmmaking styles and emerging actors shifted audience tastes. Curtis, once at the forefront, faced the challenge of staying relevant. Career transitions are common in entertainment, but for someone whose identity was deeply tied to visibility, such changes can feel destabilizing. During this period, he confronted substance misuse, including struggles with alcohol and cocaine. Addiction, often intertwined with stress and self-image, became a serious obstacle. Curtis later acknowledged losing control during this chapter of his life. Health consequences followed, including hospitalization for liver-related complications. These events were not isolated scandals, but signals of deeper strain. Eventually, he sought treatment and entered recovery programs, including the Betty Ford Clinic. Sobriety marked a significant shift. Publicly acknowledging addiction required vulnerability, a stark contrast to the polished persona of earlier decades. Recovery did not erase past damage, but it demonstrated resilience. Curtis began rebuilding, focusing on health, art, and measured public engagement. Even as he addressed addiction, life delivered profound personal loss. The death of his son Nicholas from a drug overdose in his 20s deeply affected Curtis. Few experiences alter a parent more than the loss of a child. Friends and colleagues observed a visible change in him afterward: a quieter demeanor, a heavier presence. Grief does not conform to public timelines, and for a man accustomed to performing confidence, mourning brought stark reality. Curtis rarely dramatized this loss publicly, but when he did speak about it, his words were direct and stripped of theatricality. The tragedy underscored generational cycles of struggle and vulnerability. It also reframed his later years. Fame, awards, and recognition felt less central compared to family and health. As he aged, he dedicated more time to painting and philanthropic causes, particularly related to Jewish heritage preservation. These quieter pursuits reflected a man seeking meaning beyond applause. Late in life, Curtis published memoirs that revisited earlier chapters with surprising candor. Among the stories discussed was an affair with Marilyn Monroe during the filming of Some Like It Hot. His account portrayed a complicated emotional dynamic shaped by mutual instability and secrecy. Such revelations reignited public fascination with Hollywood's golden era, where glamour often coexisted with personal fragility. It is important to note that memoirs reflect personal perspective, memory filtered through time. Nevertheless, Curtis's willingness to share uncomfortable details suggested a desire to confront rather than conceal the past. Aging sometimes brings reflection, and reflection can bring confession. By acknowledging imperfections, he added dimension to his narrative. Yet these admissions also reopened scrutiny. As cultural conversations evolved around power dynamics and accountability, stories from decades prior began to be reconsidered under new ethical lenses. One of the most sensitive aspects of Curtis's legacy involves remarks made years after his passing by actress Kim Novak. She described an unsettling experience at a gathering in the late 1950s, recalling that she lost memory after consuming a drink and later woke disoriented. Novak clarified that she did not pursue legal action and did not frame her account as a definitive criminal accusation. Instead, she characterized it as a disturbing memory shaped by an era when speaking publicly carried professional risk. Curtis, having died in 2010, was unable to respond. This creates a complex situation, an allegation without courtroom adjudication, involving individuals from a different cultural era. Responsible discussion requires balance, acknowledging Novak's account without presenting unverified conclusions as fact. The broader context matters as well. Hollywood's mid-century culture often minimized or silenced uncomfortable experiences. Whether viewed through the lens of memory, misunderstanding, or misconduct, the story contributes to ongoing dialogue about power, silence, and accountability in entertainment history. After Curtis's death in Nevada in 2010, due to cardiac arrest related to chronic lung disease, another controversy emerged surrounding his estate. Months before passing, he revised his will, leaving the majority of his assets to his wife, Jill Vandenberg, and excluding his children. The decision surprised many family members and prompted legal challenges. Questions arose regarding influence, intent, and emotional distance. Estate disputes are not uncommon among high-profile figures, yet they inevitably shape public perception. For some observers, the conflict suggested unresolved family tensions. For others, it reflected personal autonomy. Legal proceedings and public statements followed, but definitive clarity remained elusive. What lingered was a sense of fragmentation, a family navigating grief alongside disagreement. In the aftermath, Curtis's belongings were auctioned, transforming personal artifacts into collectible memorabilia. Such events can feel symbolic, the tangible remnants of a life dispersed, even as its narrative continues to evolve. Assessing Tony Curtis today requires nuance. He was undeniably influential, contributing to films that remain culturally significant. He was also a human being shaped by hardship, ambition, and imperfection. The evolving conversation about his life reflects a broader shift in how society evaluates public figures. Rather than preserving simplified myths, audiences increasingly seek fuller truths. That does not mean discarding artistic achievement, it means contextualizing it. Curtis's story illustrates how early trauma can fuel extraordinary drive, how fame can amplify vulnerability, and how unresolved issues can echo across decades. It also demonstrates resilience, the capacity to seek recovery, to create art beyond acting, and to continue working despite personal setbacks. Legacy is rarely singular. It is layered, sometimes contradictory. In examining Curtis's life, we confront larger questions about memory, accountability, compassion, and cultural change. Perhaps the most responsible approach is neither blind admiration nor absolute condemnation, but thoughtful consideration of the entire human story.